Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator. Come back to you with another video. And this is part 2 to our discussion on leadership with Kevin L. Davis. Recently, you made a post, like a throwback to when you worked at a previous company and you had an annual review and you were kind of outlining what somebody told you, and you're talking about coaching folks up or out.
Yep.
And so what did you have to change in yourself and your leadership style to lead entry-level hourly workers that you didn't have to do when you were managing high performers?
Oh, man. So yeah, essentially, the review said that I was doing a good job. I was doing a good job in my work and at a basic level managing my team, but I needed to spend some more time really managing my team. And for me, that was different because I've managed people before taking this role. For context, for those watching, so I have my own business back, since back 2005 or so. Moved to Chicago. My client base was still in Detroit. And so I needed money and getting married and all that. So I took a job working at Target Corporation. So I was a logistics manager at Target Corporation overnight, which was a great learning experience, but a trash experience in the moment. When you feel like you're above what you're doing and your skill sets are here, and you're like, why am I here? But that's life. And so managing people before that was a little bit easier because they were higher performers and they had a bit more vested interest in their job.
Yeah.
Working overnight, that's not the case. I'm not going to say that, but they're working with folks overnight. But not necessarily overnight, in retail in general, or kind of entry level jobs, it's hard to get them motivated to work because you feel like I'm not doing anything important. I'm not getting paid a lot. So you carry all of that, and you have all these external things that are going on at home, whatever. Like I've been there. And so you get to work and we're expecting you to essentially tear apart a Target location at night and get it ready to be, to be opened at 8. And you're working with 60 people who don't want to be there. And so now, we got to figure out how to manage talent when it comes to attendance and all those types of things. And so no one ever wanted to do that. And so I'm like, well, forget it. I'm getting tired of getting screwed every night. So if somebody needs to do the write-ups and all that, cool. So I'm thinking I'm just going to start writing people up. And so it was more of a reflection point on, let me not go in here thinking I can write people up. Let me go in here with a different type of mentality. And these are people that I worked with before I got promoted. And so there was that whole dynamic.
Yeah.
But it was more so, my approach went from, I'm tired of you being here and, slacking off and leaving or not coming in. And it went to, so what's going on? Because I got this attendance report here. What's going on? What can we fix? How can we make sure you get to work on time? And you find out I keep telling HR that I can't start until 10. And so when I start at 9, I have to drop the baby off, I'm late. Or you find out somebody may have a medical concern. Well, I can't kneel as much throughout our shift, and I'm working in the canned food aisles or whatever else, and I'm kneeling, so it's slower. So you find out, okay, cool. Let me then put you into soft line so you can work in the clothing section. You can stand up. You start to find out there are all of these different things that are going on with people. And once I was able to start showing that I was invested in them working, because I needed them to work. I couldn't just fire them, I'm invested in your success as long as you want to be here. That's kind of what mentality I adopted. And ultimately, some people, you just have to apply that pressure and say, look, we've had this conversation. I wasn't your boss before. So, but the way I run the show is this, and you come in late, then we'll have a conversation. We'll have another one, but I don't want to have that. And so some people self-selected out over time. And then, by the time I left, we got it down to maybe 20, 25 people per night that we were working, and we were leaving early. So, that changed my whole mentality on management at that point. So even now, like I spend so much of my time during the week talking to my staff, not about work. It's more about what's going on with you personally. We do our check-ins, and every month we're talking about how did they are there different things they've taken advantage of as far as professional development? I paid for our AMA membership, American Marketing Association membership. So I kind of mandate every month you need to have some kind of professional development for yourself, because I want you to feel empowered and learn as much. And if it's to the point where you're working so much that you don't have time to do professional development, then that's my problem. And I need you to tell me how I can help level load or take some things off your plate, but I need you to be open and transparent with me about it. And I'm not going to look at it as you just can't do the work. And so once you establish that type of bond with people and say, I want you to work here, you have my investment, and you show it, their performance, increases, and, you don't mind when they need a couple of days off. And, I'll send my people home in a minute, and I'm like, don't use PTO. Just go. Just, doing what I can when I can.
Yeah.
But, and I think part of that also just stems from me just having trash leaders. Recently, I don't know if you saw a post, but I recently found my notes that I had from Target, where I kept a text document on my phone for a book that I was going to write, which I still might, about managing from the middle. Before you're in the middle between, entry staff and management. How do you lead from the middle? Yeah. And so I was writing down all of those thoughts. And so I went back and I read them, and I'm like, my philosophy has not changed since then.
Yeah.
Because I learned a lot, and, even the lowest level person in the organization, if you can show them how their role does impact the bottom line. And then that lowest level role is like you're interacting with customers, and customer experiences start with you. Right. And when you kind of give people that, that perspective, they look at things a little bit differently.
Yeah. So, I joined like a group called Black on the Job, which I learned a lot from before I accidentally got kicked out. So basically their rules were...
I just got it approved for that group. I think you added me.
Yeah, it's awesome. But so there was a post where they were asking Black men about their experience in their career. And because of some of the responses, I wanted them on my YouTube channel, which I did interview last Saturday with one of them. And then another dude I still have to schedule. But I told one of them that I inboxed them, and that's against the rules, which I read when I joined the group, obviously, but I didn't remember in real time. So they just immediately kicked me out the group.
But saying luckily, that I inboxed
when
you?
I was, which in a job group, like I understand in other groups why that makes sense. But then after I got kicked out, I was like, that don't make no sense because of how Facebook works, and sometimes people don't see the messages.
Right, it's in the other box.
But I get it. And I wasn't really upset because I did break the rules, but I'm like, man, that zero tolerance is not cool. And so, but it is an awesome group. And like there's been a couple posts about managing up, and some people immediately see that as the negative, like, why am I doing manager's job? But through that group, I've learned the positive of managing up is not actually doing your manager's job. It's like, can you explain? Yeah. What managing up is?
Managing up is, essentially I guess you would say it's essentially advocating for yourself and your perspective and at your vantage point. And I think if anyone doesn't understand that, that's kind of problematic. You know what you know at your level with the information you have at that moment. That's at any level. And sometimes you have to tell your boss, hey, can you do this thing for me? Or like, I have no problem. Like, hey, I know you're going to email so-and-so, but can you toss this in here so that we can make sure this thing is done? That's simple, but that's managing up. Or, hey, I want you to join our meeting, but I only want you to discuss these particular things and convey these types of things. So it's kind of setting some expectations. But then also, I've had it where, I've had some negative encounters. I can't wait till it's been far enough since I've been gone from my last organization to say some of the things I want to say. But there's been some experiences where it's been negative, and you just have to sometimes push back a little bit as you manage up. In telling people because we're all different. We're all different. All of our experiences have shaped us in these different ways. And I lead because I had trash managers. And so my style is this way. You lead this way because of that. And so I've had to have some of those come to Jesus conversations with my boss. Like, all right, in meetings, do not address me like this. Or if you have a question about what's going on here, you don't have all the information, just tell them we'll have that conversation and you'll circle back. Like just kind of managing how the interaction goes, because they don't know that how you feel. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what your team is thinking. So, managing up like I do it now with my boss. She's great. She's probably one of the best bosses that I've had. But managing up isn't bad. I mean, we do it all the time, and you have to advocate for yourself and whatever you need to achieve. If you need some tools or some resources, or hey, as you all are working out the budget for next year, see me before you put it together. So it's like kind of exercising your duty. Like, I'm here, you hired me for these reasons, and I'm going to make sure you have my perspective on the things that impact me, and you're considering my thoughts and wishes and all of those types of things. So, but doing your boss's job, that's not managing up. That's actually doing your boss's job, which is also problematic. And you need to have a come to Jesus meeting to, and there's ways to approach that and saying, I've noticed that there's been some duplicative efforts on our behalf, and we both had to do these things, but let's take a moment to, let's jot down what it is that you're going to handle and what I should be expected to handle as well. There's ways to approach it, but both of those, if you come at it from a negative perspective, it's not going to go well at all. So
I can even think about in a previous job of, sometimes you have supervisors that are like, how did you get this position? Because you're not a good leader. But having to be like, they're giving you tasks and you're like, I don't have this skill set because since I've started working, I've tried to get access to this program to learn this new skill set, and you've been pussyfooting. I don't know a synonym for that, but and then somebody left who was the only person doing that. Then you try to put their work on me, and I'm like, I literally can't do that. So why are we having meetings where we're like, yes, Deborah will do visual effects. Like, I don't, and you have to have tried to learn.
You have to have those conversations. Like, I mean, I think experience tells me, and even just thinking about my own self, I don't know everything. I don't know what you're dealing with at your level. I can think that I'm providing all the resources and necessary training that is required through the job, but to you, I may not. And so who wins? I'm thinking, well, why didn't you do it? I told you. And if you don't tell me back, like, I have these tools and resources, or, let's talk about that. And then you internalize it, and then you get upset and you hate me now as your boss because I'm making you do things, but you never told me you didn't know how to do it. So there's that, there's that bit of, just benefit of the doubt that you have to exercise, because especially when you get into leadership, you have 50,000 things on your mind and things that need to be done. But also, this is how you become a leader in an organization. This is how you start to interview for your future role, and showing that, yes, Deb has no problem telling me when she has not received all the necessary resources. Deb has no problem telling me about things that are going on on her team or a division, in order for us to consider it. Because then that lets people know that you are owning your work, and that's something that I think that we really teach and embrace among our people. It's just kind of like, go in there, don't make no waves, be quiet. And then you look at why your peers are being promoted and bumped around. I mean, there are other factors that go into that. That's a whole other conversation, but being able to speak up, and that's what I look for. I don't want someone who is just great at their job, unless you're in a role that just requires you to be great at your job. If you have that title of manager, then I expect you to own your space. Come to me with your issues, come to me with your recommendations on how we can approach problems or situations, knowing when to push back if I send you a project and the timeline's too tight. because I don't know what your workload looks like. I don't know what all these things you have going on. But if you show me you're owning your space, like those are things that stand out to me, you know, when opportunities come up.
Yeah, and even in our industry, like knowing that you were invited to the meeting for a reason. So you saying as a leader, like, I don't know what sometimes was going on. And I would be at, when I became a manager at a previous position, and we would invite, you know, people who are doing the work to the meetings, and the people up here, like, they have ideas of what should be going on. But if you're doing the work and you see that that's wrong, you have to tell them. But, you know, people are so intimidated, or they have all these isms for why they don't want to speak up. And it's like, you were invited to the meeting because you're doing it.
I get it. You know, I've been there. That was long ago for me, but you know, I've been there where you get to these meetings and you see something's a little bit left and you don't know. I think some of it is not knowing how to show up, not knowing how to raise those questions, or you know, embrace the power of you know, I have some additional thoughts on that, but we can talk offline. Meaning, we can talk about this. I don't want to derail this meeting. And part of that could be, I don't know how to say it in front of people here because that person didn't do their job. Like that executive presence is something I feel we don't really get a lot of experience and exposure to, as you know, as not just creatives, but just Black folks. Because oftentimes when you get further up in leadership, we're either the only or the first. And so when do you start to see those examples of what leadership from a Black person, how, you know, what does that look like? And it's not to say that it looks any different, you know, from white folks, but when you're the only Black person, you approach things with a bit more caution until you have a bit more experience. Because now I'll just go ahead and say what I'm going to say. I'm just going to be respectful. And I know how far my leash can go before I need to like run something to my boss. But we don't want to rock the boat because we stand out, and we feel and we know that we will affect the tone and tenor for every other Black person that comes behind us or doesn't, because they choose, we had Deb, but that experiment didn't really go well. And it was like, well, that's one person. She just wasn't a good person for the role, not all Black people. And that happens, you know. So
yeah, because in America, I've realized, you know, with the particular white people that do that, it's like you're not the example for all the other Black people. You're like you are the example when you do things bad, but when you do things well, you're the exception. Like no other Black people are like this. Like I know a lot of Black people who are like this. Who are you talking to? But when you're doing stuff bad, it's like, oh, you're the example for all the Black people. But when you're doing stuff well, it's not like, oh, we should bring more.
Yep.
So, okay. One thing that I did want to mention is that I did get perspective on the importance of doing all this after I became a leader, because, you know, particularly with, you know, telling them that I'm not going to make a deadline. Once you're a leader, you're like, oh, that's why it's good to tell them. I mean, it should make sense sometimes, but once you're in the leadership position and somebody else is not telling you that they're not making a deadline, you're like, oh, I get it now. And so
you feel like it's perfection. You feel like perfection is expected.
Yeah.
And but it's not man, I'll be like, look, you know what? This isn't going to happen. And I feel like this is a manage up piece as well. And, you know, not being able to make a deadline.
If you tell them as early as possible, they'll appreciate it and they can move things around.
Especially if there's something that may need your supervisor to be an advocate, to say, hey, you know what? We're not going to meet this deadline because we don't have enough capacity to, I don't know, pack all of these new patient kits. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, I was expecting my team to do it, you know, but we got backed up. Oh, you know what? Actually, we can get some of our medical assistants who are, you know, in between patients, they can come help out. Okay, cool. Now you got somebody to advocate up. But don't be afraid to tell people when you're not going to meet a deadline, especially early as possible. I mean, that even goes back to telling people when you're going to be late. Don't tell me you're going to be late when you're late. Tell me when you feel like late for a meeting. It's like, I'm in traffic. I'm the king of that. It'll be, I know it'll take me, say it takes me an hour to get to work, right? And I'm going to a meeting or whatever. And if by my calculations, I am not going to make it, I will tell you that if it's a 9 o'clock meeting and I'm in traffic and it's 8:15 and I see the flow, I'm telling 8:15, hey, I'm trending to be late. So I'm just going to put that out there so people can say, okay, don't tell me at 9 I'm running late. I know that. Tell me then so I can say, you know what, hey, Deb's going to be a little bit late. So if you guys want to finish up some projects, whatever, once she gets close, she's going to give us a call and we can circle back.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Otherwise, we all in there like, Deb has the deck. So I guess we need to reschedule. Like, I'm the king of let you know as soon as possible. The whole way, I'm about 30 minutes away, just keeping you up to date. So
yeah. So after being a leader, I realized why some of my supervisors or other important people appreciated me not being intimidated by them and treating them like people. Some leaders who are not on a power trip just feel like they're people, and that sometimes people refuse to treat you like that. So have you ever felt this or had this conversation with others? Like sometimes it seems like even when I was president of the Young Professionals, it was like I was working with these people, and immediately as I became president, it was like, yes, ma'am. I'm like, you don't have to do all that.
Yeah. I mean, at work, it's like that now, and I don't see myself as anybody,
right.
But I mean, that's how they choose to kind of move around me and address me and all of that. And I'm just, I've had to kind of embrace it. Like, okay, but that's how you embrace me. I'm still going to talk to you and relate to you and stay in the trenches down here in this regard. But yeah, I think for me, it's, on a personal level, I'm not intimidated by any leader because I feel like for what, I know my job. That's what else you need me to know. And I'm not going to know all of these things that you know as the leader or level. And I'm not going to say anything stupid. I'm not going to do anything stupid. So if I see you, I'm going to make sure you know who I am. Introduce me. Hey, I'm Kevin, I'm director of marketing, whatever. If anything, I want you to know who I am because I'm going to be all up in here everywhere because that's just how I move. But I can't think of the last time I was intimidated by a leader. I feel like they're like celebrities, but they're very approachable when you just go up and talk to them. I don't want anything. Hey, you're here. Hey, I'm in the organization too. Even though our organization now, it's big, but where I sit, like my boss's boss is the CEO. So we're here because of the work that we do. But in other orgs, it's okay. You got a job that's leading a big org. That means nothing, to me. Like, it's a great accomplishment, but that doesn't mean you're any better than me or anything like that. You just have a little bit more experience and you got a few more direct reports and you pay a lot more money. But other than that, so.
At a previous job, there was like the number 2 in, command he had like his personality was kind of intimidating, which I could see from other people. Like, I'm not intimidated by people either, but I could see how he appreciated that when I became a manager and had to interact with him, I treated him like a person. So even after I left the company, he would see me out at these, animation events. He's like, hey, Deborah. And that's not his personality to other people because I don't know. He wasn't like, he didn't do it on purpose. It just was what naturally emanated from him. But because I treated him like a person, he would like acknowledge me in public and like, hey, how you doing? I know you love, but what? And then also I've had a colleague become intimidated by me because I was not intimidated by somebody else. So at another position we were working with this company, and one of their people were like ex-military, and I'm like, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to me. Like, but being in the South. Man, I'm glad I left. But
that's a position that's a whole thing. That's a whole social order thing down there.
Yeah, so it was like my colleague was in the meeting to kind of back me up, which to me, it just was like he was a white dude, so he was there to be the white dude in the meeting. I don't know. And you know, this ex-military dude just he wasn't even on the project. I'm like, why is he here? But anyway, he was nice. But the ex-military dude, he was like not addressing me, even though it was clearly stated that I am the person working on the project, and he was always addressing my coworker. And so at some point, I just like, I can do that too. And I addressed the like white woman engineer and didn't talk to this white man because like she know what she's talking about anyway. It seemed like you don't even know what you're talking about, even though you leading this meeting. So let me just talk to her. And so it was just like, I don't care who he is, like, because he was kind of battling. And this is the importance of defining terms, because when we presented the project to him, use the word animation, but you know, when people use that improperly, they actually mean illustration. Right. So they wanted still images, but we ended up creating moving animated images. And then once they realized that they wanted still images, they tried to, my boss backtracked, but I don't think he communicated to them. So when we were in the meeting, he was like, where are the animations? It was like, well, my boss told me to do still images. And so he was battling me on that. And I'm just like, and my colleague was trying to be coy, like, oh, we'll ask our boss. I'm like, we don't have to ask the boss. He told me that we were doing. So it was like a whole thing. And so because I was handling the guy and just telling him my boss said this and this is what I'm presenting, he became intimidated by me, which I heard through somebody else. I was like, but yeah, I don't care.
There's a lot of that, just kind of knowing when to stand your ground and but at the end of the day, always being professional, and sometimes sometimes you can't be professional, but at the end of the day, it's all about tone, time, and intact. That's my thing, the 3 T's. And knowing when to advocate up to your boss when somebody's, being difficult. And sometimes you got to take it on your own, but I'm not going to be intimidated by anybody, because at the end of the only way I'm going to be intimidated by somebody is if I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's not so me being intimidated, it's me being afraid of looking stupid. If anything, but, I don't find myself in those types of situations at this point in my career where I don't really feel comfortable in what I'm talking about. There was an awkward call I was on the other day where I did my part, but the rest of the group, they weren't all on the same page. And marketing communications is the central spoke to everything. And so there was like this whole like back and forth, and I'm just kind of in the middle. I don't have these answers because that's outside of my scope, but even though it comes back to the planet we're developing, and I'm just like, okay, well, we can talk. We will reconvene as a committee and figure this out and report back. Like, we're not going to hash this out here, obviously. And so it wasn't, and it was with a hospital group that we're looking at doing some stuff with. And so for me, it was more nervousness, because this is like my first go around in my current organization and having this type of meeting. So I don't know what their flow, my organization's flow is like in these projects. And then I'm learning my organization's flow, and then this other group, and I'm in the middle. I mean, I know what I'm talking about, but you all need to get on the same page. So that's a whole thing.
Yeah. So. All right. So this is going to be my last question, but I want to ask something before my last question. But so going back to the volunteer, and this might happen in corporate as well, but something that I noticed from being involved in volunteer work and doing it well, doing it well, is that people will look at you doing it and like cheer you on, but not help. And I am fully offended by the selfishness of people to be like, yeah, you're doing awesome. I guess not realizing that behind the scenes, I'm doing a job of 5 people. And they're like, and so even with IP, they're like, oh, you're not running for president again? I'm like, this was the worst. the least supported position I've ever been in,
Yeah.
from the top and below. No, I'm not running again. I didn't tell people that, but
They know
that's
now.
why. Well, the reason I wasn't running again is because I'm moving. I didn't tell people that either. But but even if I was not moving,
Yeah.
I was not. No, like I became president to prove a point. I'm a vice president. I do the work behind the scenes,
Mhm.
but because I have trouble, like my ideas be all the way up here, and I have trouble communicating them to people. So I was like, well, I'll just become president and prove that my ideas are viable. And then they were. But people just like seeing what you're doing and constantly giving you advice, things to do. But I'm like, but are you gonna help though?
Mhm.
Don't give me no extra work to do if you're not gonna help.
See, I'm at the point now where I will hear those people and I will specifically ask, hey, can I count on you to lead that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just be very clear in my ask. And that usually kind of pushes people back. You know, one, they may not know. I think that's part of this leadership piece is just, I always have to weigh in, you know, factor in benefit of the doubt.
Right.
And when you're achieving something and people are cheering you on,
Mm-hmm.
they may not know that you need help, or
Mm-hmm.
they may not volunteer because they like, you got this. So cool. Some people will just say, hey, let me know if you need something, but that's not most people. And so I just
Right.
factor that piece in and say, hey, you know what, actually, you know, we actually do need help with this thing here. Or when you give me that
Yeah.
critique, is there something I can expect you to lead on? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that'll push them away. Or it may be like, you know, hey, I have no problem jumping in. So for me, it's just being very, very clear with them, like, hey, go ahead and go ahead and jump in here with me. We can use some help, or
Right.
can you know somebody that can help us, you know, do this, whatever this thing is with it. But yeah, I think you just have to, again, it's for you, it's that's not managing up. I feel like that's managing laterally. You got to how to
Yeah.
manage people that don't report to you, and y'all kind of on the same volunteer level or whatever.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. A couple strategies I learned was there was somebody would suggest that we do something, and I just would be like, well, yeah, write up a outline of your idea,
Yep.
and then you never hear from them again.
That nips it right there. And then the step further is, and this is, sometimes you got to be petty. Sometimes it's, I'm not about being petty at work.
Mm-hmm.
Not at work. I'll be direct and be, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, I'm just not a fan of doing that there. However, in these organizations, sometimes you have to be petty. And, you know, especially when I'm in a position where I'm like a chair or a president or something, somebody comes up with that idea, you know, and then I'll push back and say, hey, well, you know, write it up and we'll bring it to the next meeting, whatever. And then it doesn't come up
Mm-hmm.
at the meeting and say, you know, we had some really good suggestions. I know Deb had brought up this idea about this thing. I haven't heard back, so I don't know if it's going to happen or not. You know, if that are something you're still going to do it, it pushes back. Like, you know, sometimes you gotta
Oh
bring it
my
back
gosh.
and put people on blast. You know, that's that petty side. You know, everybody's long on ideas, but short on actually the execution of it, and they don't see that until they get into
Yeah.
leadership. That, you know, somebody has to plan it and do the work, and then you have to promote the volunteer opportunity and manage the volunteers and all. Great, write it
Yeah.
up. Okay, are we still going to do that, or is that off the table? I haven't heard anything. I know we talked about that about 2 weeks ago, so I just want to circle back and see if that's something we are still considering, or we got some other project. Petty,
Yeah.
petty. I
And
have
you
done
know,
that at work
in me trying,
before.
I'm
That's something I
with
actively
somebody
practice. I'll
that
put it that way.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that, I'm still learning how to be diplomatic because I just feel like my personality, just people take things the wrong way all the time. So I just, it's a
I
constant
see that
struggle
based
of
on your
like me
Facebook
learning.
page.
And I'm just and I'm just like, okay. But even when I told somebody like we like if like the conversation got to the point where she was misunderstanding me saying that we didn't have the people, and I'm just like, at some point I had to be like, if you don't lead this, we're not going to do it. Like, that's what because she's like, I guess she was in what I was communicating or what she was misunderstanding. She was like, oh, well, we can ask this person how to do it. I was like, I know how to do it. I just need the person to do it. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So last question. So something that I've noticed in the animation industry is that when I look on websites like Glassdoor, a lot of reviews will state that the work is great, but the leadership is incompetent. And if and when we go to school, we rarely take any business or leadership classes. And when I was in college, I only took one business for animation class. So I have a theory that because the animation industry is a creative industry, there's possibly a thought that if you send people off to professional development and leadership classes and conferences, the creativity will be stifled. So how do you think creative industries can benefit from putting in more work into improving leadership competency?
I mean, not to like brag or do anything, but like that's me. Like I regardless of my title, I'm a creative. I have been my entire life. I'm still practicing as a creative, even in my current role outside of work, but I'm also managing people and managing a lot of people and projects and all of that. So I think it's a bullshit excuse, to be honest, that creatives can't have structure, can't be managers or be effective leaders. But before I kind of get into that piece, I think what happens is too many people that are not leaders are promoted, and that's when I mentioned earlier. I don't want you to be good at your job. I want you to own the work. And so you can be a great animator, but if I don't see your ability to delegate tasks, I don't see your ability to kind of manage the budget, or to manage laterally, when you're running a committee on a project, be able to manage your peers, like those are the types of things that show me you have the ability to be a leader, or, the baseline abilities to be a leader that we can build upon. If you're just a great worker, you're just a great worker. And that, even if you're a great worker for 10 years, you're just a great worker for 10 years. Now, as a leader, it's up to me to say, you know what, hey, Deb, what are your goals in this organization? Do you want to be a leader? I've had people tell me, no, I just want to be great at my job, be proficient, and keep learning. Cool. That let me know not to look at you as my bench for leaders. But I think that that's what I think I've been able to reach this kind of level of success that I've had. Because I've been going to all these different conferences, learning, networking, finding ways to improve myself, because I don't see myself as just a creative. I see myself as a professional, and being a professional doesn't mean you just do your job well. It means you run your business well in this particular space. So any opportunity I can to read something about management, leadership, I'm thinking, how can I translate this into the creative space? Because I'm leading creatives at work. How can I do that? But I need to understand, as a leader, how can I translate this the other way to my boss, who is not a creative? Right. And so you become this conduit between these worlds, and that's how you get promoted from being the creative to the leader of the creatives. And learning as many skills as you can around management, managing people, strategy, all of those things I think will help you, because then now it changes your thinking. Thinking about my career as a, now I'm the director of marketing. I started out as a graphic designer, but through reading and just meeting different people, I learned that my interest was in branding. And so in branding, it's all about strategy and positioning. So how do I learn how to take the mission and the strategic objectives of this organization and translate them into a visual form and written form? Now, the communications piece, I have to know how to bridge those worlds. And so now I'm doing what I wanted to do, but that came through having those conversations with different people in different fields, hitting them up on LinkedIn. What do you do? Meeting people out, and also just going to professional development events. And I would typically, up until recently, because I've really been kind of hyper focused on the types of events that I go to, but I'll be the only person at these events that's a creative. And they're like, why are you here? I'm like, why not? You guys teaching something, I'm trying to learn. And
I felt like such an outlier in, doing all of my social action work. because I've even applied. There's a program in the Urban League, the National Urban League, called the Emerging Leaders Program.
Yep.
And I remember, I just, you know, there's a lot of reasons why you don't get into a program, but sometimes I'll be like, even with, you know, different professional development programs in the New Orleans area, I just felt like it was like, what is this animation person trying to do? Like, they don't even fit in this thing.
They judged you. They probably judged you
Yeah.
as being this weird, quirky, introverted person who will not add to a cohort and get none of it. And it's like, actually, you know, you're socially involved. You've been in these organizations. You are actually a part of the, you know, you're in the community doing the work. And so that's just, you know, that's just that lack of exposure. There's a level of ignorance there. You know, I wasn't like the program I'm in now, you know, this nonprofit executive cohort in Northwestern. I didn't think that I was going to get into it because, well, for two reasons. One, a lot of people don't think about the nonprofit space when it comes to marketing communications. Like, we are a vital link, but people look at program managers, fundraisers, and those types of people.
Yeah.
And so it's a couple of us that actually got in that are marketing and communications people, but also I felt because my answers were too militant, I wasn't going to get in. They're asking, why do you want to do this? And I'm like, man, I exist in this space to ensure that Black and brown people receive whatever services that my organization. I was just, and I'm like, if they take me, they take me. If not, you know, this is who they're going to get in person. But it worked. But yeah, it is hard being a creative, because especially being a Black creative, you don't see that many of us in numbers. And then when we do go somewhere, our industry and our race kind of limits people that look like us in there. And in that, the third bonus part of that is, I saw a quote, I can't remember exactly, but it said, be wary of those other Black people who only want to be the only Black people there.
Yes, I've discussed this.
And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that where people feel like I'm the Black person that everybody needs to know. And it's like, actually, I don't want whatever juice you have. Like, we can both coexist. And how do we break the door down for more of us to come? Like, that's my focus.
Yeah.
How can I break the door down for more of us? I don't want your role. I don't want your connections. If anything, they need to see that we are not a monolith. So, you know, how do we get to that point? But we can't, if you're being jealous or you feel intimidated, like, I don't want whatever you have. Like, that's not my that's not my thing.
Yeah. And then back to the like leadership piece, and this is in all industries, but it's like this automatic thought that the best person should be a leader. So even when it was either in between I think it was maybe in between my sophomore and junior year, or my junior and senior year, where I worked at a packaging plant in Romulus, and I packaged peppers and tomatoes, which the peppers is as big as my hand, and you had to do 2 at a time. And I'm like, how am I supposed to fit these in my hand? And with tomatoes, you were supposed to squeeze them to see if they were too soft. And like, after maybe 20 minutes, all of them feel soft. So I was just like, this is not, manual labor is not for me. But something that would happen is that they would like automatically promote the most productive workers to be managers, which sometimes meant that there will be the Hispanic person who does not speak English will be a manager. And it's just like, sometimes, like you said earlier, the worker just need to be the worker. Just because they're the fastest or the best doesn't mean they're a leader. Yeah.
And I think some of that is they don't want to lose them. But then you bite yourself, by promoting them up, and then they're not an effective leader. Everybody's just not meant for leadership at all. And a good leader knows how to scout out and develop a leader, and how to leave some people just as a worker. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And we have to stop looking down on people who choose to just fill the role. And when I worked at Target, this is going to sound crude, but when I worked at Target, one of my colleagues, who was just a known asshole, he was my peer rather. We were on the same title. And so we had we were looking to promote some people. We had some openings, and I'm on the floor, so I'm working with people. They're complaining, I don't get enough hours, I don't make enough money, all of these types of things. So my thing is that we got we got some roles that we're trying to fill to, get you promoted. And so they're like, no, we don't want that. And I'm like, problem, solution, whatever. And then, part of it, what I later learned, some of it was they didn't want, some people are just going to complain. And some people don't want to become, they don't want to get promoted because they don't want to shine in front of their peers, which to me is like, so you're going to let somebody's perception keep you from earning more money, whatever. So my old colleague, he it's like 4 or 5 in the morning and we taking a break. And so I'm upset because I'm like, why is nobody applying for these roles? And he said, Kevin, I'm going to tell you something. He said, some people are just born to pump gas and that's all they want to do. And they'll be happy doing it. And I'm just, I'm thinking he's been an asshole. He's like, no, seriously. He's like, some people, everybody's not meant to be a leader. He's like, that's how you are. That's how your circle might be, but everybody's not meant to be a leader. And as basic as that sounds, like that changed like my whole outlook. Like let me know if you cool where you are. I'm not gonna hold it against you. We will just make you the best at what you are. But if you choose to be a leader, then I'll pour into you and develop you. But I need your commitment, knowing that you're gonna commit back with it. But yeah, stop promoting people to get them to stay. Stop promoting people to keep them quiet. Some people complain a lot and get promoted. It's like, shut up, here's this little role, be quiet. It just screws you on the back end either way. So.
And a little thing you hit in that, stop expecting people to be you. Especially where you're like, real. I always say my normal is other people's overachieving. So I do not, like, even when I was president, somebody asked me like, how much do you work on this in your free time? And I lied. I was like, 10 hours a week. It was way more than that, but I didn't want to make them feel bad because I just know that I just be putting stuff in. I just be putting my all into stuff. And I don't want you to feel like you have to keep up with me. So I was like, about 10 hours a week. But also, you had mentioned
we got 30 hours a week in there in between work during lunch breaks.
Right. You had mentioned not shining in front of colleagues. I had, when I was a manager, you'd be thinking like, oh, this is how you do stuff. So I was managing some QA inspectors, and one of them, like, we had to communicate with both the artist and the customer. And, one person, she was like the only other woman. She was doing a good job. So I was like, oh, yeah, this person is doing a good job. If you look at how she writes her responses and all that stuff and da-da-da. And then like the next week, she just started sucking. And I'm like, because I realized that she was one of those bit of a role. Like, she don't want to do too much and she don't want to do too less. And so as soon as I told everybody else that she did well, she was like, oh, let me suck to get the light off of me. I'm just like, that was not what I was trying to do, but I get it. And so I'm just like, now I have to like talk to her like, well, you did this wrong. You did this wrong. I'm like, I didn't realize, like, I guess I just didn't realize at the time that she was like that. But after I highlighted her, I'm like, oh, she just like, I'm just here to do my job.
And you also, I mean, beyond that, you have to be wary of that, of just kind of that praise piece. And, for that type of example, finding one of her examples and just using it and censoring it up a little bit and not mentioning her because she might have been cool with it. And then now there's an issue. Now everybody else hates her. Whereas in this situation, she didn't want it. So it's like, you don't want to praise people too much and give them that false sense of, like, actually, you just did this thing right. Everything else needs to be worked on. It's hard to walk that back, though. So, what are some things that you would like to plug? I know you mentioned your podcast earlier. That's it right now. That's my focus. Again, I've learned to be focused. Check out the podcast. Call it the League of Leaders. You can go to listen.leagueofleaders.org or look up the League of Leaders on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. I think is that what it's called, or Android Play, whatever it is.
Something.
One of those, whatever you at, look it up. But check it out.
Right.
I think we have some pretty good, it's pretty dope people talking about their experiences. And I think what makes my podcast a little bit more different than others is that everybody that I've had on there has achieved some level of success, and they're relevant in their age. So I'm 41, so they're kind of in that plus or minus 5 band. And that's something that I felt we didn't have. Everybody was either way older, or you got this group where everybody's super young and everybody's a boss and a mogul and they haven't achieved anything. That's a whole other conversation. So yeah, check out the League of Leaders podcast. Other than that, go buy some lapel pins off my website, Kevin Davis Brand.
So plug your social media, your website, all that stuff now.
Yep.
Where can people find you if they want to follow you?
Check me out on Instagram, Kevin Davis Brand. Website, kevindavisbrand.com. And then the League of Leaders. That's it.
All right. So thank you for watching. I want you to like So I Know It's Real, comment and tell me how you feel, subscribe to Seal the Deal, and sign up for post notifications to show your zeal. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.